Hello and welcome back. This is, I guess, the finale part 2. I really intended for the last video to be the finale, but a lot of rerolls meant the time went by faster than I expected. So, here we are for the true finale, or finale part 2, of the Gods of Winter. Sorry, I didn't mean to tease anyone like that. Completely unintentional. We are doing the colorless cards and the lands. There are lands in this set. I have done lands different ways and different times that I've done forging full sets. Sometimes I have just omitted them. Other times I have added the color of the land is associated with to the mana cost, just to like associate it with so they get the AI on board. This time I have left them as simply no mana cost lands with no other information, except I also gave them the type snow, so they are snow lands. This set is based off Theros Beyond Death, which does not have snow lands, but I wanted to add this to drive home the theme of Gods of Winter. When we get there, I'm not sure how it's going to work. I'm excited to see what the AI does, but what probably will happen, just as a heads up here at the front, is that most likely we will roll a few ideas, and then we'll take the coolest idea, and that would sort of become, like, a cycle, right? We'll just kind of manually duplicate that card so that every color gets that same effect, or every combination, or whatever it ends up being. That's what I'm thinking will probably happen, but we will find out. And before we get there, we have to go through all of our colorless cards. So, let's get right into it. Starting off with re-rolling the last card we saw, which was Old Timer, our 3-mana artifact Scarecrow, which I absolutely adore the idea of that. We talked about it last time. It has the only one ability, which is 2 mana, return Old Timer to its owner's hand. Completely useless. Let's get going. Icepick is a 3-mana artifact equipment. Okay. Equipped creature gets +2/+1 and has vigilance. Okay. It equips for 4. That's very expensive. Attached to target creature you control. Equip only as a sorcery. 7 mana gives something +2/+1 and vigilance seems bad. After that thing dies, like, I'm never really sure how to judge an equipment, because it's like an enchantment, except it's an enchantment that you can A, pay over 2 turns, and B, after the enchanted creature dies, you still have the enchantment that you can reattach later. So, the first time, 7 mana for +2/+1 in vigilance, bad. The second time, 4 mana for +2/+1 in vigilance, probably still bad. I'm going to do this again. We can do better. I forgot to read the text. I'm sorry. But it's not canon anyway. Rune of Protection. Weird. So runes, if I remember correctly, are an enchantment subtype in actual Magic. This, of course, is not one. It's simply an artifact. Rune of Protection is 3 generic for an artifact that says 3 mana and tap, you gain 3 life. That is not a exciting effect, but it might be good. Once per turn, you can turn 3 mana into 3 life. Do you want to do that? No. But it's a mana sink if you want to leave some mana open for like a counterspell or an instant later on your opponent's turn, and then you can gain 3 life if you end up not using it. I kind of like this, especially considering we saw a lot of life gain and life gain payoff in the set already. I think every color has life gain payoff. I could be mistaken, but I think that's true. And if that becomes a centralized theme, this is one of the reasons I really like colorless cards. Not because I think they're actually not great a lot of the time. I've played some sets that have a lot of colorless, and they kind of feel kind of boring because everyone's running the same colorless cards. Plus, they're more like splashing their color than playing their color. And that can feel weird. But the idea of saying, like, what are the central themes of this set? Well, the central themes are what you can do in colorless, because everyone gets to do that. So I think that's exciting, and I think life gain is one of the central themes of this set. So, I think I'm going to keep this. probably you can find me a real world, like a real Magic example that is just this card but better. I mean, I can think of that one card that's like a mana rock that taps for colorless mana and gives you a life, which is way better, but, you know, this is giving you 3 at a time. I don't know. I think it has some potential. Maybe it'd only get play unlimited. I'm okay with that. Aetherforge runes make Orzhov spies. What? I don't have a clue what that meant. Golden Grimoire. Ooh, I love the idea of an equipment that's a book. That's so cool. Golden Grimoire is a 1-mana artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has first strike. Any creature it deals combat damage to also gains first strike for as long as you control 3 or more creatures and equip 1. If you ignore the reminder text that's broken, which is excellent, 1 mana give a thing +1/+0 and first strike sounds pretty good to me. I don't know, that sounds, I like that. I think I would do this. I mean, it's 2 mana up front and then 1 mana from then on, but seems pretty good. How do I feel about this reminder text being obviously incorrect? Any creature it deals combat damage to also gains first strike, which implies that first strike means you gain giving other things first strike, but first strike means this. It's not like if you deal damage to something, it gains real Magic keyword first strike. It would get this version of first strike. So any creature it deals combat damage to gains this ability for as long as you control 3 or more creatures, meaning it does nothing, because it doesn't do anything in it other than give itself to, yeah. I'm going to re-roll this. I think you could just treat this as first strike and it would be fine. But you know what? It's a good opportunity to see something else. So why not? Let's take it. A golden scroll might conceal an ancient grimoire, but it only hints at the secrets within. Also, I just think the idea, I love the idea of a book that's an equipment. That's really cool. I think that giving something first strike is not something a book should do, so I'm happy with it. Battle Duster is a 1-mana artifact equipment. Whenever equipped creature blocks or becomes blocked by a creature, destroy the blocking creature at end of combat. That is so interesting. Huh. When equipped creature blocks or becomes blocked, the blocking creature dies. So if you put it, so you equip this to somebody, then you attack. If your opponent chooses to block, likely your thing's gonna die in the block, or maybe if they chump block, it's dead anyway. If they have something that trades favorably, then the thing you equip Battle Duster to will die, but then also that creature will die. Cool. On the other hand, you can't block with the thing that Battle Duster has been equipped to and survive, right? It means that you can only chump block or trade. You can never have a favorable block if you equip Battle Duster. So it's a downside. Destroy the blocking creature. That's so interesting. But it is at end of combat, so you will get to, like, it's not like, you blocked me, you die instantly before damage or anything. And then it has equip 3, 3 attached to target creature you control, equip only sorcery. So you always gotta check your your reminder decks, as we saw with the other one, and I think there's a previous card in the set that's just has wrong reminder text that I completely forgot to read. So it's not without precedent. These mistakes will happen. I like this card. I don't know if it's good, but it's interesting, and that is the most important thing to me. If the Shaper controlled a better version of the Battle Duster before, he or she might smile. The Shaper sounds like some kind of deific being. I want to... Is the Shaper... If the Shaper controlled a better version of the Battle Duster before, he or she might smile. I don't know. It doesn't sound like the sort of action you would expect to associate with a god. But, like, the Shaper is such a great name. Like, I kind of want to... I feel like it would be a really, really good name for your fantasy settings god figure. Like, maybe next time I play D&D, I'm going to have a cleric who is following the Shaper. Like, it's just, excellent name there. Yeah, great, beautiful. Let's move on. Yorion, God of the Winds. Okay, this isn't like a legendary creature or anything. It is a 3-mana artifact that taps for white or blue. We're rerolling this. But cool, anyway. He can blow a blast of air to slay and shred in an instant. Yeah, I mean, this is just an overpriced mana rock that's boring and has a dumb name. Like, man, I don't have anything to say about this. Sorry, let's just keep going. No reason to waste my time. That's how we ended up splitting the finale into 2 parts on accident. Silver Claw Ears is a 3-mana artifact equipment. That's just very funny. These, like, metal ears that you put on over your real ears. They're a 3-mana artifact equipment that gives equipped creature +2/+1 and equips for 4. It's just so overpriced for so little benefit. Some ears grow more hair than others. I thought there was a comma there. There's not. It just says some ears grow more hair than others. That's true. I haven't done a lot of artifacts, and especially, or even colorless cards, in Urza's AI, so forcing it to make those is really interesting to see what it comes up with, and so far, not super impressed. Flames of the Blood Boiler. That's a great name. It sounds like an enchantment or a sorcery, though, but oh well. Flames of the Blood Boiler is a 3-mana artifact. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, Flames of the Blood Boiler deals 2 damage to that creature's controller. Okay! For 3 mana, one of which is red, sacrifice Flames of the Blood Boiler. It deals 2 damage to any target. This card is beautiful. Very cool. Why is this card not just an enchantment? I don't know, right? This card has enchantment energy. We've seen a million, like, we haven't seen enchantments exactly like this, but they fill the same role, right? And that makes sense. That makes sense. Interesting, though. No, I think this card's really cool. I think this card's really interesting and cool. It's kind of a shame that it only can be used in red. It kind of defeats that whole thing I was saying earlier about how Colourless lets you see what goes in everyone's deck, but this only goes in a red deck, so whatever. Its passage into Ravnica reminds Aurelia of when the moon was last new and when the season began. Its passage into Ravnica reminds Aurelia of when the moon was last new and when the season began. That is... I can't fully unpack that, but it feels evocative, which, I mean, I'm into that. I should also say, I said that you can only put it in a red deck. In, like, Commander, you can only put it in a red deck, but in Limited, you probably would jam this in a deck that isn't red. Like, you don't need to use its sacrifice ability. The sacrifice ability is sort of like, oh crap, I really need to kill something. I'm going to ping the last 2 damage. Great. Awesome. Love it. Otherwise, this just shuts down people playing, like, creatures. It's really cool. This doesn't shut down, but it punishes you for playing creatures. So you put in a, non-creature heavy deck. A very, very cool card. Especially if we ended up getting that, like... We never really did get the red instant and sorceries, low creature sort of deck to work. Is it enters the battlefield, or... It's whenever a creature enters the battlefield, so that wouldn't even work. Sorry, to fill you in, the card I'm referring to is there was a card in red that was printed, that we forged for Gods of Winter. That was whenever you cast a spell, or whenever source you control deals damage to a player, exile it, and then create a token. That is like a 1/1 creature or something, a 2/2 creature. Can't remember what it was. And my theory was that would work well in Burn. You'd lightning bolt someone in the face, then the lightning bolt would get exiled, and you don't care because it's already done its damage. But if a creature did that, you wouldn't like that. You don't want your creature to get exiled, right? And I think that was really an interesting space to play with. And I thought this would go well with it, but it wouldn't actually, because this isn't whenever you cast a creature, this is whenever a creature enters the battlefield, so they would be entering the battlefield and punching you in the face. I didn't need to go that long about that. Moving on. That's a cool card. Sword of Frost is a 2-mana artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each equipment attached to it. Now, this I like. I don't know if it's good, and there's probably even a real Magic card that does something similar, but I love stuff like it's just fun. It's 4 mana to give something +1/+1, which is bad, and then 2 mana from then on, which is probably not bad, but it's probably okay. But if you can start like Voltroning something and just giving it a bunch of equipment, it gets bigger and bigger. That's fun. You run 4 of these in one deck, and then each one's giving +4/+4. Like, that's cool. That's cool. I like it. Hello, flavor text. The 4 weapons thrown at once, ripped through the ice and snapped into pieces. The flash of blades was blinding, but those blades, cold and black, are still cutting through the creatures who would try to hide behind the false peace of the great sheets of ice. It's perfect. It's perfect. We don't know the context for this, right? This is like an excerpt from one of the pieces of the short stories printed along with the set, and if you read that, you'd have the context for what's exactly happening here, but this excerpt on its own is still very cool and evocative, and you're like, oh, what's going on? And the idea that there's 4 Swords of Frost because you can have that many in your deck, that's so funny. Oh, I love it. That's so good. Oh. But there it goes. Collagens Claw. That feels like the kind of word that is pronounced differently, and I just didn't know. I just don't know the proper pronunciation. That's what that feels like. I could be wrong, though. It probably is. Anyway, it's a 4-mana legendary artifact equipment. Ooh, I didn't realize there was legendary artifacts in this set. That's fun. Equipped creature gets +2/+2. Equipped for 2. This is not legendary. This is boring. I like this name, right? The idea of okay, this is a legendary artifact, is this specific legendary character's claw, whatever that means, right? Only a mad god would have 2 talons, or at least the equivalent of 2. Because they're not talons, they're claws. Weird. Yeah, I don't know. The idea that after it's on the battlefield, you're only spending 2 every time you want to equip this, which isn't bad. 2 for +2/+2 seems okay, because it's repeatable, it's not costing you a card in your hand, that has value. But the 4-mana startup feels not worth it. Yeah. And it's legendary. I wanted to do something more than just give +2/+2. That's one of the things. I think that there are so many equipment that just give plus toughness plus power. Switch that. That the AI just usually makes that, and so it ends up being less interesting. Oh, hello. Silver Mask is a 4-mana legendary artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each basic land type among lands you control. I like this idea for a card. I don't think this card is good enough, and I'm going to re-roll it, but the idea of domain, and the payoff is you get +1, +2, +3, +4, +5. That's pretty cool. But even if you have all 5, what is this? It's 4 mana overhead, and then another 4 mana to equip. I didn't say that, but you can read it. And so that's 8 mana for +5/+5. I don't think that's good enough, but I could be wrong. Now, when that thing dies, you can then do it again for 4 mana for +5/+5, and that is, I think, quite good. That is, I think, probably above, better than it otherwise would be in other situations. So cool. But no, I don't know. If this just said get +5/+5, I think I'd keep this card. I don't know if it would be good, but I think I'd keep it. Or maybe I wouldn't because, again, it's kind of boring. It's just +5/+5. And the thing is, this is even though it's more interesting because it makes you care about land types, it is weaker than just having +5/+5. And that's still maybe not good enough? I don't know my equipments well enough. This might be a mistake. Maybe I should go take a look and see how strong equipments are, but I'm not gonna do that. That's a waste of time right now. We gotta keep moving. For each flavor text, the flavor text reads, for each enchantment you control, a frost creature you control gets +1/+1 for each basic land type among lands you control. That is not flavor text. Very good. Vizier's Bauble, okay, is a 4-mana legendary artifact equipment that cannot be equipped. Whenever a player casts a spell, you may gain 1 life. Now, the fact that this is an equipment and has no equip cost and doesn't do anything when attached to a creature is disappointing, but it's very cool. Just 4 mana whenever any player, you or your opponent, cast a spell and you gain a life. Again, there's a lot of life gain payoff in this set. I think this is a great little bow to tie the set together. You're going to put this in a lot of decks. Very, very cool. Love it. To Amaskar, god of subtle twisting of fate, a simple object, even a fool's bauble, can become the turning point of an epic conflict. Amaskar, god of subtle twisting of fate? That's amazing! Oh, I love them! They seem cool. Yes! I like the idea of the Vizier's Bauble, and then like a god's like, this is a fool's bauble. This is no one, this Vizier is a fool. But it's important. That's awesome. I like that. Jirapur Sword, not Jeraforce, is a 1-mana legendary artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control. Oh, okay. I mean, there's a lot of enchantments in this set because it's based on Theros. I wonder if this card exists, and if so, like, what should the mana of this be? I think this is fine. Like, it's 4 mana initially, then 3 mana repeatably, right? So 1 mana to play, 3 mana to equip. If it dies, you can equip it again for 3 mana, blah, 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 blah. You've heard me say that before. And then you're getting +1/+1 for each enchantment. Okay. I mean, if you have, what, like 3 enchantments, that's 3 mana to equip for +3/+3. But once you go past that, it's getting stronger. Before that, it's getting worse. Good payoff, good potential. I like it. Yeah, no, it's an easy enough hoop to jump through, but not so easy that I think this is going to get incredibly broken. Love it. I think it's really, really strong. I say this all the time. Strong design, meaning I like how all the pieces come together from a design standpoint, not necessarily strong card. Like, nah, no. That's not what I'm here to talk about. On the pinnacle of Kurian's Maw, 1 sword stood against all others. Jirapur Sword. It's an interesting name for a legendary artifact, but I don't hate it. Staff of Valor is a 1-mana artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has first strike. Equip 1. This is boring, but I like it. I don't think that this is... I mean, maybe this is too broken. I have no idea what the going rate for giving something first strike is. This might be way too cheap for that ability, or it might be perfectly reasonable. I doubt it's too expensive. It's about as cheap as you can get. It's 1 mana to play, 1 mana to equip. Seems great. First strike's a very powerful ability, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is too strong. But I like it. It's clean, it's simple. We're going to need to have some equipments that are kind of cheap just to go into the, like, that other card we saw just now that cares about number of equipments attached. Like, yeah, you're going to want some not super amazing, interesting cards. You need to have some that fill out the gaps, and this looks like a really good one to do that. Without being, like, bad, it seems perfectly reasonable. I like it a lot. The bear was no hunter. The boggart, however, soon learned that you must feed to thrive. Yeah, that makes sense. Dark Animus is a 3-mana artifact creature Phyrexian cat. Okay. In the colorless spaces, what is Phyrexia doing? Dark Animus is a 3-mana 2/2 artifact creature. It has flying. So good so far. You can tap Dark Animus to add 1 mana of any color, and Dark Animus gets +1/+1 until end of turn. This card is cool. I like this a lot. At bare minimum, it is a 3-mana flying 2/2. That's good. On the other hand, at bare minimum, it's a 3-mana mana rock that adds 1 mana of any color. Not amazing, but perfectly fine. In the best case scenario, this is a 3-mana 3/3 flying blocker that then also gives you 1 mana that you can use at instant speed for something. Right? I mean, I don't know how often that specific situation is going to come up, but that's all, like, that's cool. It's a decent upside, but it's also a very flexible, just general usage. You might only use it for a mana rock, you might only use it as a flyer. This card is such a good design for a colorless, like, maybe it's an uncommon, maybe it's common, I'm not really sure. But, like, this just, I think this goes in a lot of decks without feeling weird or boring or tiresome. Like, sure, you might see it a lot, and it's like, oh, it's another Dark Animus, but its use case is fluid, which makes it interesting and not just, like, different decks will use this in different ways, and I think that's really fun. To free the beasts is to unchain the will of nature. To enslave it is to chain the soul. Yeah, that checks out. That I really am impressed with that card. Sundisk is a 4-mana colorless and Sundisk is a 4-mana artifact. For 1 and tap target creature. For 1 and tap target creature. Is this good enough? I don't know. I've heard, like, tap down effects can be very, very strong. So you spend 4 mana, do nothing, kind of bad. But then from that point onward, 1 and tap, you tap something down. So every turn from then on, you can spend 1 mana to tap down one of your opponent's things. I mean, it's an artifact also, so you could just spend 5 mana the turn it comes into play. Like, you're allowed to tap artifacts the turn they come into play. So, if this was, let's say, an enchantment that said, you know, target creature taps and doesn't untap, period. Like, that's just how that card works. It's an enchant a creature, right? Like a blue shutdown effect. If you spent 5 mana on that effect, and then had to pay 1 mana every turn for the rest of the game, that sucks. That sucks. I think that would be bad. But the flexibility that, okay, cool, you've enchanted my thing and shut it down every turn for the game. I'm going to, like, sacrifice that thing you're shutting down because I can't do anything about it. Then you can say, cool, I'm going to shut down this other thing instead. I think it works. I think there's probably a direct comparison we could find that does a very similar effect. I've been saying this a lot today, but it's true, and I don't know my cards well enough to say so. I really want to go through the set and, like, pull out all the good comparisons to cards like I've seen other, you know, like, spoiler video reviewers do, but whatever. We'll get to that when we get to that, if we get to that. Point is, I like this. We don't have this effect. I mean, it's working color, so even if we did have this effect already in the set, it would still be novel. And I think there's also something to be said for paying extra for being colorless. That sometimes is relevant. So even if this is overpriced, I think this is going to be a really nice, just if you're in limited and you have no removal, this might be your best removal, and that's worth it in that situation. I like this card. Snowball War with Dragons. Is that the tagline of the set? There's no dragons in this set. They're all gods. I mean, it'd be amazing if the gods of winter were just straight up dragons, but that's not the case. We've seen the gods. They're not dragons, but I love that. Is that what set 2 is? Set 2 is the Snowball War with Dragons? That's so dumb. Let's move on. That's really funny to me. Pixis of Hexahedron is a 1-mana artifact. It taps to add red or white. Quite good. You can spend red and white and tap and sacrifice Pixis of Hexahedron to draw a card. So, this is... I don't remember exactly how Mind Stone works, but this is like a Mind Stone, right? It's a mana rock, tap it, makes some colorless mana in that situation. In this case, it's actually fixing, so it's even better. And then later, you can spend some mana and tap it and sacrifice it to draw a card, right? Let me pull up, I'm going to pull that up real quick, actually. Mind Stone, tell me how good Mind Stone is. I think this card's probably too strong. Yeah. So Mind Stone is 2 mana instead of 1 mana. It adds colored mana instead of colorless mana. So... okay, so far, our card is just better than Mind Stone, and Mind Stone is quite good, I've heard. But, Mind Stone, it costs a single generic mana to draw a card, whereas our card requires 2 colored mana of different colors. So, I don't know. I think I'm going to re-roll it just because I want to see less colored mana in my colorless cards, personally. I want cards that anyone can use effectively. Now, again, if you are not playing Commander, you could just jam Pixis of Hexahedron into your deck and say, cool, I don't care that this red or white mana is red or white, I'm just going to use it as colorless. So it's still just, you know, a cheaper Mind Stone at that point. And maybe that's fine, but it's not exciting. You want to be running cards of your color. You want things to feel like they mesh together well, even if it's just as effective as colorless mana. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but feels weird. Feels weird. I'm rolling it again, but as its gem, Pixis of Hexahedron allows one to watch its starry light change from time to time. Vindicate, or Vindicate, is a 1-mana artifact. As Vindicate enters the battlefield, choose an opponent. Creatures you control get +1/+1. I can look past choose an opponent, do nothing. That's just, whatever. Every once in a while, you gotta just enjoy the AI being quirky like that. But I think 1 mana, your creatures have +1/+1 is not only too strong, it's too strong coupled with the AI doing something quirky and stupid. So, I think it's an easy reroll. The Hand of the Vindicate may be the sledgehammer of vengeance, but it can be the catalyst for change. Queen Mev of Vindica. I mean, that sounded like a very cool story that was not related to the story of this set. Bow of Bogarden. Ooh. Is a 1-mana artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has vigilance and trample. Equip 3. Okay. This is a lot going on for it. This might get past my just giving things bonus stats is boring. 1 mana. So, the first creature, it's 4 mana to give it +2/+2 and vigilance and trample. That's a lot of stuff. From then on, if that thing dies, you can re-equip it for 3 mana and give it +2/+2, Vigilance, and Trample. I think this is too good. I think this card is too good. But I'm not sure if it is too good. I know that's stupid, but we're dealing with the AI. We already have very broken cards in this set. Having a colorless card that's very strong that anyone can play seems actually okay. I think that's fine. This doesn't just win the game on the spot. It's not that kind of broken. Yeah, I mean, you have to invest mana into it. Even though it is a very good effect for the amount of mana you're putting in, you still have to get to like 4 mana. Like, I'm a lot more willing to forgive an overpowered card if it doesn't come down until turn 4. I mean, this could come down on turn 3. You're right. I didn't really thought about that, but it could. And 3 is pretty early, but this isn't 1 mana. Maybe that's silly, but I want to keep moving, and I think it seems fun. Oops, here's a good card that anyone can use. Go at it. As the rime fell, Zulnari took the woods by force. All that remained were the pockets of his twisted minions and the shambling. All that remained were the pockets of his twisted minions, the shambling, and flailing. I don't know how to read that. Did I just try to say parse and read at the same time and said preed? I think that's correct. Either way, Frost Mantle Cloak is a 2-mana artifact. Tap, add red or black. Okay, that checks out. 1 mana and tap. Target creature can't block this turn. I don't think that's too strong. I think that's probably fine. 3 mana, target creature can't block. You can then continue for 1 mana every turn thereafter. Stop someone from being able to block. It's pretty strong. It's pretty strong. Then again, you could have just tapped it down with that other card. Although that card was like 4 mana to start, I guess. But that's more flexible. Being able to tap something down is more flexible than tapping something down just to block through it. So, I don't know. Then it also taps for black and red. Which means black and red decks will get an extra tool for mana that other decks don't, which feels a little bit bad. Honestly, if this just tapped for colorless, I think I'd be more into it. Oh well, I think I'll allow it. If you're doing custom work, you could always just riff on this and go, yeah, let's just do a cycle of it and have, 5 2-color combinations and give everyone this ability, and then it'd be fine. Although, I think if you were going to do a cycle like that, it would be weird for them all to have this effect. You'd want them all to have, like, different effects, and that's a whole other thing that I'm not dealing with. Anyway, the Lady Hulda's staff is worn on the shoulders of every rider. She removes the weight of their packs. I don't know what that means. Frostmantle Cloak is a good name for a card, though. Golden Citadel. Oh, we're out of our artifacts. We're into our lands. Golden Citadel is a snowland that's also a mountain. It has reminder text, Snowland survival rules variant in effect. So if you are playing, if you know the Snowland survival rules variant, if you use this card, it's in effect. Just, we all know those rules, so just keep that in mind when you're reviewing this card. It taps to add white or blue. But it's a mountain, so we would also tap to add red. So this is just a tri-land, but it only counts as a mountain. That's kind of fun. I kind of like the idea of doing a cycle. Maybe that would have been kind of fun if they had done that in Dominaria, where they're like, we care about domain, but instead of just having, like, every land type, we have, like, maybe 1 or 2 land types, so it still counts towards your domain, but it produces colors of a third, or a second or a third land type. I think it'd be fun. I think that'd be a cool way of doing that. In this case, though, I'm not sure if there's, like, This is just a broken card right now. I mean, other than, of course, the fact that Snowland Survivor Rules Variant are in effect, and that does change the arithmetic a bit, so it's a little bit hard to judge. Its warm golden light sparkles on the spires, making them glitter in the sun. I do want to say, so, I said this at the top, I'm going to say it again, going into this. I don't know how I'm doing this. I don't know what I'm doing. But there are 8 snowlands at the bottom here that we're going to be going through. Am I going to roll until I like every single one? Maybe not. I'm not entirely sure, because presumably what I want at the end of this is 8 lands. I would like 3 of those lands to be good, cool, interesting lands that maybe are kind of colorless, like they have no associations, because they would go into any deck. And then, apologies, have probably like one good land that I can then just change the color identity of to make a cycle. That, I think, would work really well. So that's what I'm sort of hoping for. I will probably roll until I'm like, good enough, and then I'll move on. But maybe not all 8 of these cards will make it in the final list. I don't know yet. We'll find out. This card, however, I'm going to reroll this. Roof of the World. So, I guess this is the part where we have to sort of decide, how strict do we want to be with the reminder decks? Because I have seen a lot of AI-made cards that use the reminder, this is how mountains work, and just doesn't understand what that reminder text is for. Which, honestly, I do not blame Urza's AI for that. It is stupid. It is dumb that, like, there's reminder text on this card for its card type. Why would you think those things are associated? You wouldn't. There's no reason you'd think that. So I don't blame it at all for not realizing that the reminder tap add red on a mountain, it says that for a reason. Anyway, in this case, we have Roof of the World, which is a great name for a mountain. I love that. And it has reminder text, tap, add, tap, add, white or blue. Then it has 2 tap, attacking creatures get +2/+0 until end of turn. Honestly, kind of a cool, like, mountain. Like, if you ignore that reminder text, I kind of like the idea of this as a mountain. Now, is that a reasonable effect, right? This is your land, so it taps for a colorless, or sorry, a red. What am I talking about? This is your land, it taps for a red. If you use it that way, it's a red. If you don't use it that way, then you're effectively costing you 3 mana, because you're missing the mana on this card that this card would have generated. So it's 3 mana to give everything +2/+0 until turn. And you can do that every turn. I mean, I don't know. Is that too strong? Maybe? But red would like it. I can't say no to that. I'm going to keep this here because I like the design conceptually. The final version might be different. It might look a little different. It probably won't have that reminder text. And I guess here's a question. Would that be an interesting card in a cycle? Right? If everything was the same except for it's red, blue, green, black, and white, etc. You know what I mean. Would that be interesting? And I think kind of no. Like, this is a really interesting effect in red. It's something red wants to do. If you were going to do a cycle like this, you'd have it be like, this is the mountain that generates red, or you can tap and spend 2 to get things +2. And then maybe you've got the white version that adds toughness. And then you get the blue version that, I don't know, makes a target creature jump or something. Like, just having these sort of effects. I think I'd want them all to be like, all attacking creatures gain this until end of turn, like X, and whatever it happens to be is what it happens to be, and that's different per color, but I don't really know what that should be, and I don't want to make those decisions. That's the point of it being AI generated, so I'm not sure how to feel about this. Point is, I'm going to leave it here for now, so we can come back to it. For the chosen of Konda, victory is always sweet. Negevo Flames is a snowland ice field. Ooh! I do love when the AI comes up with its own land subtypes. I just think it's funny. Do they exist? No. Do they mean anything? Also, no. What is this? It says, reminder, tap, add, white or blue. That checks out. I'm okay with ice fields generating white or blue. Why not? They're basically island plains, right? And then it says, Negevo Flames deals 1 damage to you. There's no trigger. I guess the implication is like, if you tap this, it deals damage to you, which makes sense. It can tap for 2 different colors, so the payoff is that it pings you. Okay. An instant heat wave swept through the air, a roiling mass of color. Nah. Moving on. Try again. Wait, no, that's not moving on. That's trying again. Different thing. Frostfield Mire. Ooh. Is a snowland ice sheet. It has bracket 8 bracket frozen tombs. I'm gonna treat the bracket 8 bracket as part of the ability word. It has frozen tombs. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Frostfield Mire unless you sacrifice an island or sacrifice a swamp. Huh. Okay, I want to talk about this for a bit. So, this might be the most, like, designy custom AI, like, not AI, like, custom design that I get on the show. Because these are all very weird, not finished designs. The AI is just not great at this type of stuff. But it is evocative. It's making my brain spin, and I'm like, could you make a card? Okay. That's like Frostfield Mire, Snowland, Island Swamp, Frozen Tombs. At the beginning of upkeep, sacrifice Frostfield Mire unless you sacrifice an island or sacrifice a swamp. It can also just say sacrifice an island or a swamp, because it would be one at that point. And then it has, like, tap for 8 mana. I mean, that's obviously way too much, but I'm saying 8 because I'm seeing the 8 there, right? That's what's making me think of. But, like, the idea of a land that comes down and just gives you a stupid amount of mana, but you have to sacrifice a land every turn for the rest of the game is very interesting to me. What would the cost have to be for that to be worthwhile? Because what it's basically saying is, right, unless you have ways of getting extra lands on the battlefield, right, like Green Ramp, it would be basically saying, this game, I'm going to have 5 mana to spend every turn for the rest of the game, and never more than that, unless I have like a mana rock or some other kind of ramp. But I have to feed it every turn. So turn 1, you play Frostfield. I guess it wouldn't be turn 1. Turn 2. So turn 1, you play an island. Turn 2, you play Frostfield Mire. You tap both of them. You've got however much mana Frostfield Mire makes, and the one you just played. The one you played, then next turn gets sacrificed, and then you play another island from your hand, or swamp, or whatever. And then, so you've got the amount of mana this produces plus 1 every turn, as long as you don't miss a land drop. If you miss a land drop, this goes away. Unless it doesn't come down until like turn 3 or 4 or 5, right? That's the other thing, right? Is that if this comes down late, you've got like 4 mana plus whatever this makes. But the idea is the amount of mana, the amount of lands you have is a buffer until this goes away. But ideally, you play a land every single turn to feed it so that it doesn't go away. Unless you want it to go away. You might get to a point where you're like, I don't want this anymore. That's fine. What would the right mana... Like, how much mana should that make for that to be reasonable? Because I don't know, right? Like, if you play this on turn 2, and it produces, let's say, 3 mana. It produces 3 mana. You already have an island. So on turn 2, you have 4 mana to spend. That's a lot for turn 2. Can your opponent keep up? Does that just win at that point? Maybe. And that's not what you want. But it does mean, like, I guess that's the thing is that if you made a card like this, especially if you made it as like a cycle, which maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't, it benefits an aggro decks and it punishes your control decks. So, or maybe it doesn't. Like, I don't know how I don't really know how Magic how Magic matchups work really. If I'm aggro, I destroy all your stuff, right? I want that mana now, and I get all that mana, and I get to, like, do stuff with it and beat you up. But if you're control, can you deal with that influx of mana early game or not? I don't know. Because that depends. I guess that's the whole point of the game. Likewise, if you're control, you don't really want to be playing this, though, because you probably want to get to, like, 8 mana or something, right? Unless this gives you, like, 8 mana, in which case you just do your control gameplay stuff on turn 3, and sorry, I'm spending too much time on this, but I think there's a seed of an idea here. I don't know if there's a way to balance it, and I'm so curious. Because it's such an interesting drawback of, like, nope, you have to sacrifice an island every single turn. You will never have more mana than this unless you sacrifice Frostfield Mire. That's so cool. I don't know. When darkness fell, the snowfields transformed. Once the elves had been forced to abandon their kingdom, the vampires followed. Now their mire will turn and absorb their former domain. This card does not function, because we don't know what it does. It just says, sacrifice it, and that's all it says. But that... It makes me... It gives me... It's inspiring. And that's what this is all about. Let's move on. Spiral Coliseum is a snow land, ice land. It taps for red or white. This doesn't matter. Let's keep going. As the first shard to rise, it's an affront to the other shards, yet it brings them together in unity. Is this done rendering? Yeah, I think so. Okay. You gotta wait for it to render, and if you click on it before it's finished rendering, it will... What happened here? Snood is a snowland ice. It has brackets 2x bracket, whatever that means, 2 generic and a white, you gain 1 life. Okay. It then also has Wooburg, target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. This card sucks. I was all like, ooh, Wooburg, what are you doing, AI? No. No. In this place, all cares fall away. The landscape glows, and all cares fall away. Amazing. Untamed Snowland is a snowland. It has reminder text. I don't know why the AI thinks white or blue are the one, or like, that's the combination. Taps for white or blue. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. We'll get back to that. For generic and snow mana, okay, Untamed Snowland deals 1 damage to each creature. That's pretty cool, actually. So it requires another snowland, or it doesn't make mana. And I mentioned this before, I don't know if I want snow basics in the set. Because I think snow mana is a really interesting mechanic if it's rare, But if all of your basics make snow mana, then who cares? Why does it even matter at that point? But if you had multiple snowlands in your deck, if you're playing constructed and you had, 4 of whatever is the correct color snowland, that's pretty unlikely you're going to draw that. You'd have to have, like, another one. Whatever. Maybe you have 8 in your whole deck. That's probably fine. For 2 mana, it deals 1 damage to each creature. Question becomes, does Untamed Snowland make mana? I think you could do it. I kind of like the idea that it just makes 1 generic snow mana. That sounds fun to me. Or, once again, you could make it into a cycle. That's also reasonable. My brain always wants to, like, make these colorless lands. Obviously, I know that all lands are colorless, but you know what I mean. It's the fact that the AI renders them without their color treatment, because it sees them as colorless, because they are. They don't have a mana cost. But, if these were printed in Magic, they would be colored. Either way, it reads so much as this colorless sort of, it's Untamed Snowland. It's this, like, wasteland, right? I like the idea that this taps for colorless snow mana, of course, because it's a snowland. But then also, the alternate method is... Oh, actually, if it taps for snow mana, I didn't actually realize that, it's 2 mana. Untamed Snowlands deals 1 damage to each. It's not 2 mana and tap, so it could pay for its own snow mana. Do I like that? Because what that means at that point is that this kind of says 1 mana and tap. Untamed Snowland deals 1 damage to each creature. Is that too strong? That's not too strong, but the fact that this is repeatable, if you have more sources of snow mana, 2 mana, ping the board, 4 mana, ping the board, 6 mana, ping the board. I don't know, now that I say that, like, that's a lot of mana for not a real Wrath. Like, that's a fake Wrath. But it doesn't cost a card in your hand, right? You can just do that every turn for the rest of the game. I'm undecided. Once again, it's going to stay here in the sort of design document, as it were. None of these are canon yet. All of these lands that we've seen are just ideas. Very different from what we've been doing for the rest of the set, but I think this is the way you're going to have to do it, unfortunately. Unless you want to give color to your lands to trick the AI into making colored lands, which does work pretty well. I've done that before. I actually quite like the results. I might try that again in a future project, but for the purposes of our block, we're not going to do that, just to be consistent at this point. The mightiest giants gather at the north, for this land of perpetual snow provides ample opportunities for combat. Fair enough. I like the design of that card a lot. I don't know if it would need to be tinkered with, I think. Other than the reminder text, which already, doesn't mean anything. Altician Whistler is a snowland mountain. It's a mountain? Like Mount Whistler? Amazing! Once again, the AI thinks it should tap for colorless... Wow, why do I keep thinking that's colorless? Taps for white or blue. At this point, I'm very happy just to ignore it every time it says that. And then it says, as Altician Whistler enters the battlefield, you may reveal an island or mountain card from your hand. If you don't, Altician Whistler enters the battlefield tapped. So, it's just a bad mountain, but the upside is it makes snow mana. Now, if you're playing with snow basics, that's not an upside. But I don't know. I'm into the idea of saying snow basics are banned. If you need snow mana or snow permanents, you're gonna pay that as a premium. You're gonna actually have to have, it's gonna enter tapped instead. I'm kind of okay with that. That might be fine. Them being non-basics though feels weird. Like if this was somehow like a basic mountain, but also had that ability, What I'm saying is basic snowlands should have a downside. That's what I'm saying. We're just gonna have to errata all of Magic. I'm gonna leave that one there now. I think that's like it gets the wheels turning. That's okay. Home of the Glaciers is a snowland ice castle. Okay, I do love the idea of castle as a land type. That's fun. Also, is it giving me ice because it's snow, as in like the land type is castle and the snow type is ice? Because that's funny. I like that. Once again, it has nothing text. Like I don't even know how. I don't even know what the AI was looking at that made it think that that was a reasonable thing. To say 8 greater than 64, 8 or more, or 9 or more. Yeah, not a thing. That makes sense. I will read it, though. It sits in the distance, gazing upon the evergreen tree, which provides the surrounding hills with much-needed moisture in the midst of a long, harsh winter. Camped out. Once again, yeah, not working right, but we can see. Maybe it'll be inspiring. I do think that it's giving us mountains a lot because it's thinking like snowy mountain, and it's yeah, interesting. So once again, it says 2 times. I don't know why. Up to 2 snow goblins can be deployed from your hand. Okay. At the beginning of your end step, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. Okay. So I do like the idea of a land that doesn't make mana. And it's basically just like a 0 mana enchantment, but it takes your land slot. That's always been interesting to me. Like, I like the idea of that. Like, I don't know. It's kind of like a 0 mana sacrifice a land effect in a weird way. I guess not really, but that's what it reminds me of. I don't know. It's interesting. Camped out, like, it's not even like describing a landscape. It's describing like a thing you're doing. Like, it just feels like an enchantment. If we ignore that first part, 2 times up to 2 snow goblins can be deployed from here. Like, that doesn't mean anything. But at the beginning of your end step, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. Okay. I mean, sure. And yes, if we wanted to be strict about things, we could say, this taps for red mana because it's a mountain. You could do that if you wanted to. But, I don't know. Again, I think you could riff on this and make that what it does. Just have this effect. But it doesn't make any mana. That's legitimately interesting to me. I'm gonna keep it for now. We'll see what we do with it. I don't know. I'm not sure if I like it or not, but it is interesting. Let's hope there's no sun on our parade. Shiloh, God of Ice. Ooh. Okay, the God of Ice being like, I don't want sun on my parade. That would melt my ice. That's really good. Blessed Relief. No, this is not Blessed Relief. But it made a forest. That's kind of cool. I mean, at a certain point, it makes you wonder, like, could you just print, yeah, Blessed Relief, it's a snowland mountain forest, no other text. Like, generally, you'd want to have a downside to an effect like that, because it's better than a basic, but The mountain goddess Idun broke her holy image into pieces, sacrificing her last sacred branch to allow Thor's hammer to rest safely. No, I don't think that happened. Reap the Tides is a snowland ice plains. Okay. Taps for white or blue, as is usual, and then it has the ability word Reap the Tides. For 2 mana, a white and a blue, and tap, each player draws a card, then sacrifices a creature. Activate only during your upkeep. Wow. Wow. What would I want this to be? If I was, like, since I have gotten to the place where I feel okay riffing on these cards and not taking them exactly, because I'm going to be here forever if I try and make them exact. Try and use them as written. It's making me go, okay, what do I want this? Like, this is inspired, this is a cool effect. What do I want this to look like? What does the best version of this look like? And I don't know, right? Like, 2 mana and tap have this effect. Does it even tap for mana to begin with? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe it's colorless, maybe it's white, maybe it's blue. Probably not white or blue because, again, as we said, that is sort of an upside and it would need some downside to relate to it if we wanted to quote-unquote balance it. It's AI set, you know. We've been over this. There's a lot of broken cards, so balance is not the most important thing to me. But maybe it doesn't do anything. Maybe it just has this effect. At what point does it feel like a land? Isn't that just another enchantment? Am I okay with that? Maybe. I don't know. 2 colors. Tap. Each player draws a card. Cool. You're paying, but everyone's getting a benefit. That's generally not a good thing. Then they sacrifice a creature. Okay, if you have no creatures and your opponents do, they're losing a creature. Now you're swinging that downside into an upside. Often you're going to be activating this when you need to draw an answer. So maybe your board is empty right now. Interesting. And then activate only during your upkeep is a very interesting timing window restriction. I like this. I like this effect a lot. Do I like it as a land? And if it was a land, A, would this be only available in white and blue for some reason? Or would it be a cycle? If it was a cycle, what would the color combinations be? And would they all have this exact same effect? If they had this exact same effect, would that get boring? And I think it would, right? I think you'd want to have slightly different versions for the color combinations. But I'm not sure what that would be. Like, I think this actually looks to me like maybe the blue-black version, right? Blue, draw a card, black, sacrifice a creature. Then you've got, like, your black-red version that's, like, black, sacrifice a creature. We've already established that one. And then red is, like, I don't know, just take 5 damage to the face or something. Like, just burns both players. I don't know. Then 5 is way too much. But you know what I'm saying, like 3 or something. Then you've got your, I don't know, red-white version, where red is that damage, and then white is like heal. That doesn't work. That would be bad. Although, as we've said before, healing is kind of in every color in this set, so I don't think a heal makes a ton of sense. I think that would be weird. But again, there's some potential here, and I think that's interesting. Also, I just love it whenever the game uses, or the AI makes ability words. The mountains shrink, the cliffs crash, the seas freeze, the skies darken, the ice age recedes. Recedes, does it? Huh. Mountain of the Gods. Snowland. Subtypes only. You know, honestly, if you want to make some AI cards that are just, like, jokes and don't function, this is how you do it. You tell it to make lands, apparently. Snowland. Subtypes only. They found themselves in a vast sea of snow. No life in sight, no paths to be found, no signs of gods or giants anywhere, no clues to the presence of a titan or mortal, not even a scratch in the white nothingness. I have a rules question for you. If you had a card that said all permanents lose all types, but not subtypes, what would happen? I don't know. I have no idea what would happen. I'm fascinated by the answer to this question. Because that's what this card makes me think of. A land that says, permanents have subtypes only. What would that do? Speculate below. I'm gonna roll this again. But that's so interesting. I wonder if that's a possible effect in the rules of the game. City. Snowland. Ice Rink. 3.0 out of 5.0. It's not, I mean, I guess that's a fine rating, I suppose. Those of you with a green thumb should grow it under your window to take advantage of the northern exposure. There you have it. If you're wondering, that's what you should do. Fortress Eternal. Okay. Snowland. Mountain. 65-70. Non-snowland creatures you control get +1/+1 and have trample. Okay. How do we feel about a land, once again, that just kind of maybe doesn't do anything mana-wise, but it's kind of like an enchantment, but it counts as a land, and it's takes up a land slot to play, but otherwise it's free. And then it says non-snowland creatures, which, I mean, there are some snowland creatures, don't get me wrong, that exists. Non-snowland creatures you control have +1/+1 and trample. It's very strong. Even if we ignore the fact that it, as a mountain, it would be able to tap for red. I don't know. It's like not even interesting to me for some reason. Winter is here, the witherlings long defeated, for we hold their legacy. Chanel Deathlord. Cold Haven is in Ice Wastes. Interesting. It says 5-3. Cold Haven is a cold and cruel world where there is always ice. I don't have anything to say about this. Let's keep going. We can do better. I'm sure of it. I believe in you, Urza. AI. Icicle Portal is a snowland ice castle. It has 3. Whatever that means. When you control no creatures, you lose the game. Okay, let's riff on this for a second. This is a very dramatic downside. If you ever have this land under your control and you have no creatures, you lose the game. I have no idea if there's any way of giving this to your opponent. If there is, suddenly this card probably becomes broken. So let's just pretend that doesn't exist for the time being for the sake of this discussion. I think probably you couldn't give a land to another player. Maybe probably only like a non-land permanent. But I don't know. I don't know all the treachery effects in the game. If you had a card that had that dramatic of a downside, how much mana does it have to generate for it to be worth it? I don't know. Because again, I mean, if you can just say, like, turn 1, I play like a 1/1 imp, and then turn 2, I play this thing, it gives me like 10 mana, and then I just win the game, then you're happy to play this thing, right? Like, you're happy to play it. So even though it's a very dramatic downside, it would give you such a huge early game boost that it wouldn't matter, right? You just, yeah. And this is why this is such a hard thing to balance, because it's not just like, okay, when is that fair enough? It's also this element of, you want it to not be like, well, if you draw it on turn 1, it's broken, and any other time it's fine, because then it just becomes a game about those high rolls. That's all it becomes about. It stops being about the rest of the game, and that's not interesting. But I don't know, this like, obviously I'm very much riffing on this already, but the idea of a land that has a downside like this, what's its upside have to be? right? Currently it has no upside. It doesn't tap or anything. It's an ice castle. It doesn't create any mana yet. Well, I don't know. I don't know. There's no ice like a true friend. Geitbjorn, Dwarf Healer. Interesting. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this is the second last card that I was planning on making in today. And of course, I forgot to add a dummy card to the bottom, which means if I scroll down, we'll hit the bottom of the page. And you won't be able to see it, because I have a bad setup that doesn't accommodate for this last thing. So, honestly, I don't think we're not keeping these exact cards anyway. So perhaps we don't need to really worry about that last one. What we need to do is we need to come up with a decision about what this should look like. And there's a lot of interesting things going on here. One thing I'd like to say is that I really like the AI coming up with names and stuff. So I might just use these names even if I change the like body text. That seems like a decent way of doing that. If I wanted to like make a cycle or something out of some of these, that would help. Roof of the World is such a good name for a mountain. I love that. That's so good. So the question becomes, do I want to just discuss this one-sidedly for a while and make something up? Or would that be boring? I feel like it'd be probably pretty boring. And I would be curious to know what everyone in the comments has to say about the land issue that we're talking about here. So I think I'm going to hold off on the lands. Next time, I'm going to be taking the rest of the cards from this set, going to be putting them into Tabletop Sim, and I am going to be playing around with them in 3D virtual space and comparing the card types and creature types and themes of the different colors and seeing what through lines I find in the lore as well, as much as I can. And we're just going to have a sort of live hangout video of seeing what the cards feel like once I get them in front of me and I can look at all of them at once instead of one at a time. And hopefully, we'll be able to come up with some really interesting ideas about where the set is and what it looks like and kind of give it like a review in that sort of way. Maybe later I'll make an actual proper review video. That would be a lot of fun. But next video is going to be that. It's going to be me going, let's actually look at these cards and break them down and talk about them. Although it will probably be pretty casual and organic, as most of my videos are. Thank you all. I love you for being here and putting up with my very unprofessional setup. Anyway, let me know what you think about the lands. I am not unwilling. I am willing to make up my own weird, like, custom designs for the lands. I think 3 lands that stand alone and maybe produce colorless mana or don't produce any mana would be really good. And I think that a card that can then be a cycle and produce either 5 different color combinations or each of the different 5 colors would also be very cool. With that said, I don't know whether or not those would be different in the cycle or if they'd just be the same effect like Shocklands and stuff like that do. But yeah, I'm interested in both of those directions and what could happen. Obviously, I want to make sure when I'm incorporating the ideas that we saw in these lands that we generated today and not just complete original ones, because that kind of defeats the whole point of this whole Urza's AI thing. But as it stands, the lands don't function and do anything really interesting or functional. And maybe that's the answer. Maybe the answer is just, cut the non-basics and don't worry about it. So let me know how you think in the comments. How you think. You know what I'm saying. I'm tired. Good night, everyone. I've been DarcyBits. You've been lovely. I will see you next time. See you next time. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Bye, all.